Hello everyone, my name is Nati, and we have a very special guest on today's video on DMVSportsZone YouTube channel. We have Bram Weinstein, the official radio play-by-play voice for our Washington football team. Thank you, Bram, for being here and for being a part of this interview. Is there anything initially that you want to say for all the fans out there?
You know what? Like, what do you think of the name? What do you want us to do?
Yeah, I personally think the Red Wolves would be the best name out there for us. I do like the Red Tails, but I think there's so much momentum around the Red Wolves and it being really reflective of so much in this area. Also, it being about an endangered animal that we sort of need to bring more attention about. But yeah, that would be my take on it. I don't know if you have a particular take that you want to share, but
I actually kind of like it the way it is right now. I don't think it's that out of the realm of possibility that they just keep Washington football team. I mean, we'll see how it sticks.
Yeah.
But you know, I was very attached to the previous name, just grown up with it. Mm-hmm. And there's part of me that feels like, well, if they don't change it, it never really changed. And I get why it had to be removed. Mm-hmm. But I like the nostalgia and the history, and I hope they hang on to it a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely am not like, I like the name. I'm not like too fond of it, but at the same time, I could do with it if it were to be our long-term name. But before diving into the questions for this interview, I do want to first send out my prayers to Ron Rivera and his family after we heard the late-breaking news last night, the sad news that he was diagnosed with cancer in his lymph nodes. And I heard that it was a very treatable form of cancer. And I know you even tweeted out prayers to him and his family. So hoping for a speedy recovery for him and wishing for the best as well.
Yeah,
so,
it's terrible news. I mean, this team has gone through a lot, and you know, he's a big part of the real change here. I mean, I think a lot of people are, and I am, and I'm not trying to be biased about it because I'm associated with them, but there's been a lot of wide sweeping change that has occurred this year. It's been overdue. Yeah. And he is a big part of that. And, you know, there's so many people that I got to talk to when he worked in Carolina that, you know, have said over and over, not only is he a really good coach, he's a really great man, and he's a really great leader. Mm-hmm. And I think we've seen that in the way that he's acted and held himself here in the first 6-7 months of his tenure. And this is awful. So hopefully they did catch it early, and hopefully there is treatments that won't keep him away from the team and the sideline. And hopefully it'll be something that can be handled and something he can put behind himself. But right now it's awful news. And, I feel for him. I do.
For sure. And I guess with that being said, we'll just dive into the questions. So first and foremost, I know you were a diehard fan, still am a diehard fan of the team. And I was wondering if you could first talk about your experiences sort of growing up in Maryland as a diehard fan of the team and how that deep fandom sort of carried over into the career work that you've done in the past.
So, you know, I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is a suburb of Washington, D.C., and I grew up at a time when they were the Patriots. You know, they're like going to the Super Bowl every other year, 4 times in 10 years and winning 3 of them. And they were great every year, and double-digit wins were normal for them. That was an expectation. And I also was very lucky. I had a neighbor who was a very close friend, and his grandparents had season tickets to RFK Stadium, and they had 4. And luckily for me, his older brother did not like football. So I got to go with him and his grandparents for a number of years, like through middle school and high school. So I was at the games when they were winning. And outside of that, like at my house, Sundays were a big deal in my house. They were a really big deal. Like the team was religion for us. And so I just became such an enormous sports fan locally. But at the time when there is no baseball team locally, and they clearly were the bigger deal of the other 3 professional teams, it became kind of the lifeblood of the city. And I think it like more than anything, I went to the Super Bowl parade when they won the first one as a kid, and the entire school system in the Washington area was shut down for the day. I mean, it kind of tells you how important they were. And so I just was a huge fan. And I knew as a kid I wanted to be a broadcaster. And I always knew I wanted to be associated with football because I love football, and specifically them. And I've been very lucky. You know, I got to cover them for 8 years, and I got to be part of the broadcast team as a sideline reporter for a couple of years. And now I've got this, and it truly is a dream job. You know, in broadcasting, there's a lot of things you can do, and you'll enjoy it, and it's fun if you get a chance to do it. This is one that I wasn't ever sure would ever actually happen, but it's the one thing that I always wanted to do. So I'm very privileged and very lucky to have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting just to hear about your experiences at like Super Bowl parades and all the winning going around and stuff. And, you know, as a lifelong fan for about like 20 years now, I just wish I could one day see that. We'll see. But as a college student myself, a Chicago student, also realizing there are probably other college students watching this and who want to possibly be in your shoes one day. Can you talk a little bit about how your college education at the American University right here in DC sort of shaped how your career path was over the last couple of years?
Yeah, sure. I knew what I wanted to do when I was young. I wanted to be in broadcasting. So I was looking at broadcasting schools, and I only applied to 4, which I don't know if that's little now because I applied to school a long time, but I only applied to 4, and at the time that felt like a small amount of options. One was Maryland because it was local to me. And at the time, the standards of getting in were a little lower. So it was one of those, it was the safety school. I knew I was going to get into Maryland. I think things have changed for them academically, and the standards to get in are much higher, but not when I was in high school. I applied to Ithaca. I applied to Syracuse. Syracuse might be the best broadcasting school in the country, probably is. And then applied to American University. And I really had intention initially to go to Syracuse as a kid just because of reputation. But American had offered me a partial academic scholarship, and the idea started to kind of grow on me to be home. I liked being at home, being home but away from home at the same time. And they have an incredible broadcasting department. And the other part that really helped for me, and I don't think I would have gotten had I gone somewhere else, were my internships. I interned for Warner Wolf at Channel 9. Locally, and then I interned at Sports Talk 980. And because I interned for them, because I got to know them, because I was in the city I wanted to be in, that offered me opportunities once I graduated that most, I think, graduating college students don't have, especially if they're not in the area they don't want to be. So it ended up being really a great choice, and it is a terrific broadcasting school, and I teach there now, actually. I teach in the School of Communication Writing for media. As for you, though, I'm jealous of you because I've turned a corner to become an entrepreneur, and where you are is one of the best business schools in the country. So, it's funny, I've thought about this now that if I were to go back again, University of Chicago is one of the places I would consider, just because of the business acumen you get by going to school there.
For sure. Definitely blessed to go to the school. But it's also always good to stay home. And I am very appreciative for your thoughts on this question and sort of diving into your experiences at American University. And with that being said, moving on to sort of, I guess, the lessons that you've learned over the years, can you talk a little bit about them, whether it be working at SportsCenter, which is actually where I first came across you as a kid here in Virginia, or being a Washington beat reporter, hosting an ESPN radio show, and even in your most recent work with Empire Media. Can you talk a little bit about the lessons you've learned over the years and how they help you in your current position as a team's official play-by-play voice?
Sure. We're at a very different time in broadcasting. It's funny, as we're building what is going to be the new radio booth, of the team, we're cognizant of that not as many people listen to the radio as they used to, that this show is going to need to function differently, that it's going to have elements that are more attractive to younger audiences like yourself. The content's going to have to be a little bit different, presented a little bit differently, more socially interactive, probably combine things like fantasy and gaming and gambling. And so we're looking at it from a more modern view, knowing that it's going to be used as a dual purpose and not just for people who are riding around in their car. It couldn't be in front of a television because times have changed. What I do think has not changed through the years is writing and being precise and accurate and factual and craft. Effective communication hasn't changed through the years. Anybody and everybody, no offense, could have a podcast. Anybody and anybody could have a blog, and so it has watered down what the professionals do and the ones who rise up and have successful shows. That goes back to elements of effective communication, and it's what I talk about when I teach, and it's what I would impart to anybody who wants to do this for a career. It takes time to learn how to find your voice, how to write, and how to present yourself. If you can figure those things out and you can do them at a high level, you can fall into whichever medium works for you. Things have really changed. Like SportsCenter is changing. The way that ESPN will present it is changing. It's way more personality driven than I think it ever used to be. It used to be this room where you had to find a way to kind of differentiate yourself because there was a model of how they were going to do the show. Now they're leaning more towards the personalities because they realize that people are interacting with it differently. Yes, they still want news and highlights, assuming sports happens, but they want the personalities too. And that's why people like Scott Van Pelt are succeeding in the forum now, as opposed to some of the others. And in terms of audio, I think finding new, different ways to expose yourself to audiences because it's available to you is the hardest part of communication these days. You used to have to go to places to land somewhere, and that's where people then, be exposed to you. That's no longer the necessity, but you need to be good at marketing yourself. You need to be good at social media, and you need to be aligned with people that allows you exposure. So the pathway is very different than it used to be. It used to be like when I graduated, you work for certain places, and those certain places lead you to this place, and then it leads you to that place, and then hopefully you end up where you really want to be. Now, someone like yourself is out in front of it by doing your own show immediately. It's up to you, though, to make sure that the right people see this show, and that's a different skill set. That's marketing,
for sure.
And that's social media. And the people who are able to differentiate themselves, do a good job of communication, and figure out how to market themselves, they're ahead of the curve.
It's definitely all important, definitely helpful tips for anyone who wants to navigate this path in terms of their career. But thank you for your answer there. And also, with your current position as the play-by-play voice, could you talk a little bit about the process of becoming the official voice, and what was your immediate reaction after getting the call from who I presume to be the senior VP of media, Julie Donaldson? You can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I spoke to her and I spoke to Terry Bateman, were the two people I spoke to directly, and he's essentially the CMO of the team, and I was very emotional about it because it is a position I wanted. I have been very lucky to do some, really interesting things like work at ESPN and be an anchor there. But the truth is, I've always really wanted to ascend to a prominent position in my hometown, and specifically with this team. But this position has been held by two people since 1979. So the chances of it happening in my lifetime or in my career, or when it does pop up, me being the one, is slim. So it was very emotional for me to get it, and it's very exciting for me to get it. What else did you ask? What about my career?
Yeah, in terms of
the process.
Yeah, the process
of putting this together. So we're just kind of getting started with that because I think the show is going to be a little different than what is a traditional broadcast. And I don't actually have a really deep background in play-by-play, so this is going to be new for me too. I believe, I like to tell myself it's a mechanics thing that I'll teach myself how to do that because it comes down to delivery. It's just a different skill set than some of the other things I've done. So it may take a little time. But we're just getting started with the process. But, what we really need to figure out, three of us, Julie, DeAngelo, and myself, is how the chemistry is going to work, how the flow is going to work, who comes back from a break, who reads the ads, how are we going to set up each new drive, and how are we going to get in and out of plays, who is going to speak after this play or that play. So I think there's going to be a little bit of work that needs to be done, but we're going to start doing mock games really soon. And the hope is that we'll get our act together by the time we get to the Eagles game.
For sure. I'm looking forward to you, Julian, DeAngelo Hall being in the booth, and it should definitely be fun and definitely give us sort of that space that we need, especially in these unprecedented times with the raging pandemic going on around the country. As a diehard fan of the team and now member of the organization, what are your thoughts on this new Rivera that the organization is embarking on, both on the field and off the field? And I know you touched on this before, but sort of how excited are you just to be a part of it?
So, I couldn't have asked personally for a better time to start this, because I think everything's new. Mm-hmm. So because everything is new, and that's rare when you have something that's this old, that everything feels very new, you get the opportunity to kind of shape it and not have to live up to whatever their broader expectations of what you would do would be. They're changing the name. They're changing their look. They changed their coach. They have a very good young quarterback. They have a lot of really young defensive players. They have a new team president who is very impressive. They have changed a lot of people in the building, and for some of it was not good reasons, but it was overdue. And so there is a very fresh new feeling about them. And I'm hoping that leads to wins, but that's not been the case for them for a long time, at least not consistently. But it does have this kind of feel of optimism that, okay, we finally learned our lesson. We're going to turn a corner now. Things are going to be actually very different. And it's really encouraging to be part of something like that. I don't know whether it's going to work. And this diagnosis for the coach is a hiccup for sure, in the momentum of that. But I do feel like we're dawn of a new day, and in a lot of ways. Yeah. And, we'll see what that looks like, and I'm just kind of excited to be part of it.
Excited to watch it from here in my living room because of the fact that we can't go to games this year. But again, definitely looking forward to you, Julie, and DeAngelo being in the booth. And sort of as our last wrap-up question for this interview, do you have one final message that you could deliver to fans right now? Because I know a lot of fans are down on themselves because of the fact that we've had a tumultuous offseason, we've had so much change going on. A name that a lot have been attached to over the years has been sort of thrown out the window, and now we have a new name, new brand, new era. Could you give a final message, I guess, to the fans out there who are still clinging on to some hope and still clinging on to the new radio booth that you, Julie, and DeAngelo have set up?
Yeah, I think, from a team perspective, I'm pretty optimistic about them, and I think they're being underrated. Mainly because they have what appears to be an embarrassing level of talent on their defensive line right now. So I don't think people are really looking very closely at how much young talent they have coming together at the same time, specifically on that side of the ball. Ryan Kerrigan is a annual Pro Bowl candidate and is a backup. Yeah. So, they have more talent back there, and they've got a good 3-4 year window before they're going to have to make decisions about contracts. So I think that, their defense has the makings of being very, very good, like top 10 type good, which will make them competitive overnight. And if they hit on Dwayne Haskins, and we're going to know this year, but if they did, I think they're going to be a lot better than people think very quickly, like competitive better. Like maybe not playoffs this year and certainly not Super Bowl this year, but trending towards watch out, here they come. And in their division, the Giants are still behind them in terms of a rebuild. And the Eagles are staring down enormous cap problems in the next year and maybe flipping out their quarterback soon for who knows why. So if they turn into a transitional period, and Dak Prescott, for some reason, doesn't sign with the Cowboys, in a couple of years, I see a path where Washington's the team to beat in the division. And so I think there's a lot of hope, for them to be competitive differently than they were. I saw last year, and I know what their record was. I don't think that roster's 3-13. I think the circumstances made them 3-13. I think the circumstances are very different. And I would be happy with 500 or better, honestly, this year in the first year with no offseason and a new coach and a young quarterback and all that stuff. I think that would be good. But if you see them week to week being competitive, I think you're going to see there's a sign that that's coming. And in terms of the organization itself, you know, there is a lot of change here. I believe people should be skeptical of it because there's been a lot of change through the years and none of it has added up to anything consistent. But this one feels different. For the first time in a very long time, this feels like the entire building is on the same page, working towards the same goals. I mean, there were too many times, too many examples, and the most recent one was they go pick a quarterback and the coach didn't want him. I mean, that's ridiculous. Like, I don't know how you're ever going to win if that's what's happening. But that's not happening anymore. Everybody is on the same page with one another, hopefully working towards the same goal. And with that in mind, I'm optimistic. You know, I don't think it's a magic, you know, turn it around overnight. But I do look at the roster, and the cupboard is not bare. Like, they have a lot of young talent. Terry McLaurin is a star in the making. Steven Sims might be. They have a couple of running backs that may surprise people. They have holes in other spots, but every team has a couple of holes, and their defensive line could be the best in the league, and certainly has the trajectory of being that because of their age. And I'll tell you this too, like, having now seen Chase Young in person, he is a monster. And you're going to be very happy that he's on your team and not on the other one when you see how imposing he is. So it's I see a lot of things to be very positive about, and hopefully they got to win though. They got to go do it and win.
Yeah.
It's been a long time, and we're overdue for that. Really, as a fan base, we're really overdue for that. And I'm hoping that that's what we're going to be part of. You know, as we start this new era.
Yeah, and I definitely agree on several of the points that you made. Do you think the team is a little bit underrated at this point? Hopefully, with the improved coaching of Jack Del Rio specifically, and also Ron Rivera, prayers, you know, hopefully he recovers from this. But I think we could be improved, and I think we'd be coached up to get us a couple more wins than we did last year. But yeah, this is a slow rebuild, and
I'll bet my house on we're not 3-13 again.
For sure.
That much.
Yeah.
That is not this team. They have too much talent for that. For sure. Are they 12-4? No, probably not. But if Haskins trends the right way, I'm not surprised if they're 500 or better this year.
Yeah. And you could just go back like a couple of years, right? When we were 7-9, but we started off the season 6-3, and we didn't really have great quarterback play then, but our defense was sort of leading the way, and that could sort of happen this year as well.
I think so. Yeah.
But with that being said, thank you so much, Bram, again for being on this interview, being on this call. It's greatly appreciated. You are a great person for being on it, and also I can't wait to see your work as the official radio play-by-play voice for the team. Also, shout out to John Zagul of John Z Sports for allowing me this ability to sort of connect with you and to actually have this interview. So once again, thank you very much. And is there anything else you want to say towards the end of the interview before we wrap up?
No, thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it. And I assume you are doing everything online this semester, so that stinks. And to all the college students out there, this sucks. I don't even know. This is really crazy, but hopefully something will happen, and maybe by the spring everybody can get back on campus.
For sure. I hope so for college students and for others as well. But yeah, thank you again for your time, and that's it. Peace.